So yes, we are.
All right, great. We're recording, and so if you guys ask a question, make sure it's a good one because we're going to post all the really silly ones on it. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that. All right. Let me share my screen out. All right. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. Jay and I are going to try and keep this to a tight 45, maybe try not to bleed over more than a few minutes here and there. But for those of you who don't know me, I am Envision's founder and CEO, Todd Knapp. I'm also very much an AI evangelist, and I spend a lot of time talking about emerging technologies and following what's going on in the industry. And I speak on lots and lots of different topics. So if you guys find this stuff interesting, by all means, follow us on our social so that you can know what's going on when I'm presenting and what the subject matters are going to be. We're going to have some very interesting emerging tech coming up right towards the end of this year. With me today is Mr. Jay Longley. Give everyone a wave, Jay. There he is. So Jay has been, how long have you been with Envision, Jay? It's been a while now.
About 6.5 years. Yeah, pretty good run so far.
Only feels like 6 years and 2 months though, right?
Right, yeah, flying by.
So Jay's a senior consultant with us, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but Jay, you were a business owner yourself. You've been very involved in cybersecurity through most of your career, and in the last couple of years have really dug into specifically the security around AI, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a technologist for 27, going on 28 years. More than half of my career was as a business owner. So in consulting for IT, but yeah, I've had a heavy focus on cybersecurity and more recently cybersecurity and AI. So we'll dive into a little bit of that later on today.
So I'm going to warn you guys all in advance. If you weren't here before, you didn't notice, I'm actually in a right cast on my dominant hand right now. So I've got my Cheshire Cat cast going today. I just got it replaced. So I've been doing a lot of ridiculous things when it comes to typing. So if I goof up a live demo, that's why. So plan for today. We keep these groups small. Feel free to just stop me and ask a question. You don't need to put it in chat. You're welcome to just raise your hand in Teams or speak up. I don't care. More questions, the better. If you don't want to be the person that speaks up in the middle of something, you're welcome to use the chat also. Brandy and Matt are from my team. They're going to be monitoring the chat for me. So if anybody posts there, they'll stop and interrupt us. If you'd like, you can have a copy of the recording. You're also welcome to a copy of the slide deck if you'd like that. So we can export that and send it to you. Just let Matt and Brandy know. Our goal for today, if you didn't hear earlier, this is Copilot 101. It is one-on-one, but it's 101. So this is for people who really don't know anything at all about AI or Copilot, Copilot being Microsoft's AI platform. And the funny part about the term Copilot is I'm seeing Copilot used by other companies that are building AI tools as well. I'm wondering how long it's going to take for Microsoft's attorneys to start calling them. But when we talk about it, when I use the term Copilot, I'm referring to Microsoft's technologies. I like to do live demos. My demo environment is my live production environment. So I have to be very careful with the live demos I do. Every now and again, I may pull an app off the screen for a moment, make sure that I'm not about to expose sensitive data before I put the result back on the screen. And there are some demos that I simply am going to tell you about because if I did them live, I absolutely would be exposing data that I don't want to expose. So we're going to bounce around through several Microsoft user productivity products. And then I'm going to pass it over to Jay for a while to talk about how to think about security for Copilot. Like I said, I may be moving data on and off the screen or apps on and off the screen because I'm being careful of data. But most companies that I encounter are trying to figure out how to go from not having any AI in their environment to having Copilot implemented. And there is a very specific process here. You can go out and buy a $30 Microsoft Copilot license. It will not give you anything that is especially fantastic for you. And we've seen a lot of companies buying $30 Copilot licenses, doing nothing else, and then later on canceling those licenses. I mean, we get calls from Microsoft reps asking us to help these companies because they're saying, we can't quantify the value. It hasn't been especially useful for us. We don't think it's worth doing. But that's because they haven't taken the time to understand Microsoft Copilot and to understand, for example, how to build a meaningful prompt. You can't just say anything to an AI. There is an art and a science to building a good prompt. We actually cover that in detail in the third webinar in this series. For those of you who don't know, this is a three-part series. Today is 101. Next week is the configure, tailor, and extend, where we get into the nuts and bolts of how to add external data sources to Copilot's knowledge base, how to tune what Copilot looks at in external data sources when it's answering a question, how to think about tailoring the platform to your own business. So at Envision, we have a product called the CNSA, Comprehensive Network Security Assessment. If I said to Copilot, how many CNSAs did we do last month? Copilot's going to look at me with a blank stare because it doesn't know what a CNSA is. You have to train the model. So this is not as simple as just buy a license, apply a license, and boom, we've got AI. There is a process here that companies need to go through to do this well and to do it safely. Like all great, powerful technologies, automobiles, guns, airplanes, garden hose, you can either use them for their intended purpose or you can swing it at somebody's head and steal their seeds. Garden hose are a good tool. We don't get rid of them because some people use them for bad things, and we don't just hand keys to cars to young people without putting them through driver's ed. We train them on how to use these tools. We have to do the same thing with AI, or we're not going to be successful. So let's talk about Copilot with regard to Microsoft. Copilot is not Copilot is not Copilot. When they use that term ubiquitously, they constantly are talking about Copilot for Microsoft. There are a lot of different Copilots available. This is actually not the entire list, by the way. In the realm of Copilots that are available to us, we have Copilot for Windows. So in regular Microsoft Windows 11, there is now a consumer version of Copilot. And in fact, the latest generation of computers being released by Microsoft, the Surface devices, are coming with a Copilot key on the keyboard. And the biggest difference between that hardware and anything that you've got right now is an onboard NPU, neural processing unit. And the reality of AI is that AI becomes more valuable to us as consumers when the hardware at the edge of our environments in our homes supports edge computing for AI. So, if you've wondered why there isn't yet I won't use her name, the Amazon Echo, that wonderful lady that starts with A. If I say her name right now and I'm on speakerphone in anyone's house, I'm going to trigger your devices. So I'm careful about that. But if you wondered why conversational generative AI isn't part of that platform yet, the answer is that if you tried already today, there was actually an article this morning about the global power problem associated with AI, because the amount of energy it takes to run AI prompt and generation is so high, and the amount of computing is so intense that clouds are already consuming significantly more power and are already running out of compute capacity because we're trying to do everything centrally. NPUs, like the ones that are just now coming out in the new generation of Surfaces, put some of that computing at the edge, right locally on our devices, right? So that's when we're going to really start to see generative AI coming home. But in terms of what's available to us, we have Copilot for Windows. We have Copilot for Microsoft Edge, and Microsoft Edge being just a web browser. So if I open up Edge right now and drag it on screen, you'll notice the little Copilot icon. If I click that, oh my goodness, here's Copilot for my work data and for my web data. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Copilot for Edge. Then there is Copilot for Microsoft 365. There are line of business specific Copilots, Copilots for sales, Copilots for service, Copilot for finance, which is brand new. There's also Copilot for developers in terms of Copilot for GitHub, for security professionals. So Copilot is not Copilot is not Copilot. We're going to be spending most of our time today talking about Copilot for 365 and for Microsoft. As we get further out into the next week's session, we're also going to look at custom Copilots. So custom built elements of Copilot to extend and get more value from the platform. So just so we all understand how Copilot actually works, this is one of the very first diagrams Microsoft ever released about Copilot. It came out before the product even existed, and it's, in my opinion, one of the very most important infographics they've ever put out there. So the way Copilot happens is we have our Microsoft apps. I'm going to show you a whole bunch of these. User makes a request of generative AI. Copilot passes it to the Microsoft Graph. The Graph is essentially an API that knows where all of your data, chats, emails, meeting contexts, everything, all your content is in your cloud environment. It gathers up any data that may be relevant to that prompt, and then it sends it over to a large language model powered by, guess who? OpenAI, ChatGPT. And that data gets analyzed, a response is generated, and then it's sent back to the graph for further grounding. And what they really do in this step is this is where they apply security. And I'm not going to steal Jay's thunder here, but if we don't think about data security, then the answer that the user gets back may contain information that you don't want them to have. So you have to be careful with Copilot. Copilot, I think the big data breach of the coming 36 months is not an external data breach. It's an internal one. It's where a user, I mean, I keep going back to when Salesforce at the beginning of the year laid off, I think it was like 11,000 people or something like that. And I was picturing a world where the user is, some random employee is like, I know Mark had a meeting this week. Give me a summary of the meeting. And Copilot comes back and says, the meeting was about laying people off in the organization. And here's a list, an Excel spreadsheet of all the potential candidates. There's risk in Copilot. Now, there's some reasons why that particular scenario probably wouldn't happen. But similar things can happen very, very easily if it's not configured well. Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Teams Premium. One of the very first things I want to show you in terms of a live demo, and we're actually I'm going to come back to this slide in just a second. I want you guys to go from, okay, having nothing to having lots of AI capabilities. So let's look at, I mentioned Edge a minute ago. Almost everybody on this call, I'm assuming, has tried ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is really awesome. I got a note from a client this morning saying, hey, we need a policy for AI in our organization. I've been getting that a lot lately. Everybody's afraid that with ChatGPT, you're potentially adding to the trained knowledge base with company-sensitive data. They should be worried about that. That's a very real risk if people are just using ChatGPT. I am not a fan of people just having personal ChatGPT subscriptions in the workplace for that reason. There is absolutely a risk of data exposure there. But if your company is using Microsoft Edge, see this little green shield here? You can read what it says right there. Commercial data protection applies to this chat. Use discretion when sharing personal and organizational data. This communication with a GPT is not going to train the model. It will not add information to a larger data set. So I don't have to worry that some user in the future is going to ask a question and get an answer that includes some of my information. But let's see an example of what we can actually do with this thing. So remember I said that there's sort of an art and a science to creating prompts. You need to be specific with a prompt. What do you want the AI to do? How do you want the information formatted, and what does success look like? So here's a prompt. Create a draft of an email. All right, that's what we want it to do. Reminder for booth staff about an upcoming event. Remind them that they'll be traveling internationally. Suggest ways for them to prepare for international travel. Include a checklist in table format. Specific requests. What does success look like? A checklist and table format of materials that should be included with a booth setup for trade shows. I'll send this. We'll let the GPT do it. And here we go with the response. And there we are. So here's an email. And I hope this message finds you well as we gear up. Important reminders, travel dates, insert the dates, event location, booth number. Awesome. Preparing for international travel. Check your passport, check visa requirements, health precautions, currency exchange, communication, and packing essentials. And then here's my checklist of items that we need to bring. And then it lets me best regards, put in my information. Perfect use case for just a, edge AI, right? So this little slider up here lets me ask it questions about data that exists in my organization versus data that exists out on the web. So I have an ability there. Similarly, I can also add images and attachments. So right here from Edge, I can do all the same things I would typically do from ChatGPT. I can generate images. I can give it a file and say, summarize this. I can give it an image and ask it to write a descriptor for the image. All those things are possible in Edge Copilot.
I just want to add real quick here. So if you're on the website of it, the website is not searching your internal data. It's not searching your Teams message, your SharePoint files, your OneDrive data. It's not looking at any of that. If you're on your work side, if you click that switch and you're on your work side, the work side is only searching that data. It is not searching the web necessarily, unless you have the connectors built in to do that. So there's certainly delineation there, and it's worth noting. On the website also, if you have a ChatGPT subscription and you have Copilot, you essentially have the same thing, right? You can use Copilot Web to do almost the same exact things that you're doing with ChatGPT today. So you can save yourself some money. I would, before I cancel my GPT subscription, certainly compare prompt by prompt, but you'll have pretty stellar results. So,
all right. So let's take a look now at this overlap here of Teams and Copilot. So I had a meeting that I was in, and we just make sure I'm not gonna give away anything I don't want to give away. And no, I'm good. Okay. So this is AI summary of a Teams meeting. So every meeting at Envision that I participate in gets an AI summary generated. Of course, I get the recording powered by Microsoft Stream, but I also have my AI notes. Now, this was us preparing for a demo we were doing at a conference. So I made a list. The meeting notes kept track of what I was talking about and what Susie was talking about. And largely, this meeting was me presenting what I was going to present at the event. So I had 3 people. I asked them to listen in, make sure that the presentation made sense. There were some follow-up tasks that came from it that were right here. And there's also mentions and a transcript. But the nice thing about this is if I go to the transcript and I start looking through the transcript and look, let's say I searched on, this meeting was about digital fluency. So I'm going to search on that phrase. So it found the first thing where I was presenting what are the core tenets of digital fluency. Thanks to the AI transcript and the connection to the video, I can simply click this section and you'll notice that it jumped right to the section in the video where I was talking about that. And I can listen to that real quick and know what's going on. So transcripts that I can engage with. This nice little area underneath shows me who was speaking. As I mentioned, I was presenting in this circumstance and asking people to listen. These are comments they were giving me towards the end. So if I remember from the meeting, oh, right at the end, Susie was saying something really important to me, I can click on this section of this timeline, see where she was speaking, and the video jumps right to that point so that I can catch that. So the idea is to be able to catch up very quickly by combining Teams Meeting Premium, which includes Copilot for intelligent recap. All right, let's move on. Let's see. Well, that's Jay's next slide. So let's go to some other live demos. I'm moving slowly here. Outlook. Let's do an Outlook demo. All right. So this is my Microsoft Outlook, and I've got you kind of containerized here into a folder that doesn't contain much for demo purposes. But I get a newsletter on a pretty regular basis, and it's called TLDR. So I don't, the funny part about TLDR is it's designed to take the news and put it in short summaries so I can consume it faster, but I get like 10 a day. So I don't always get the chance to read all of them. So now I want a summary of the summaries. So I'm going to click on the Copilot icon and I'm going to drop a prompt in here and say, summarize emails in my inbox that contain TLDR, focus on recent cybersecurity articles. It's now going to go and search all my emails. And I could have given it a time frame. I could have said summarize emails in my inbox from today, so that maybe I had a chance to look at all my communications tomorrow. Oh, look at this. I couldn't find any emails. That's right. I moved them all. I moved all the cybersecurity ones. Perfect. All right. I'll take the cybersecurity request off the end of it. And it's looking through emails that it may found that may be relevant. It's going to generate a summary for me, so we'll let it do that. A couple of these demos I'm going to bounce in and out of because some of them do take a hot minute. But for example, when we do Outlook, which actually while we're waiting on this, we'll go ahead and do that one too. PowerPoint. I'm going to create a PowerPoint. Oh, there it goes. Here's my summary. This morning I received one. TikTok's massive open AI bill. Fantastic. All right, so there you go. AI email summarization. I'll give you a more practical application for this that I use constantly, but which I would absolutely present sensitive information. I will frequently ask Copilot to summarize all unread emails from internal Envision employees, and it will do that for me. I will ask it to summarize emails that are unread in the last 24 hours that do not contain the word newsletter. That almost immediately filters out, because I get 6, 7, 8 different newsletters, and I get nice summaries. I also can ask Copilot to identify emails that I haven't read, but which I should respond to. And one of the things that's powerful about that prompt is that AI knows who I'm emailing. So it makes a list of people that it should prioritize in my life, and it will pretty accurately identify customers of mine, emails they've sent that maybe I haven't responded to, and will recommend that I email them. That's a very, very powerful prompt. So we'll take a look at PowerPoint right now, Copilot in PowerPoint. So I'm very interested in lithium-ion batteries, and I'm a sailor. So I was asked by my manager to do a presentation on the risks of lithium-ion. It's always faster for me to edit something than it is to create it from scratch. So I'm going to give it a prompt. Create a presentation about the risks and benefits of lithium-ion phosphate battery technology on boats. I'll click send, and we're going to let Copilot get to work. So let's see, it's looking things over. I'm going to actually go ahead and stop my presentation for a minute so you guys can see the whole screen. There we go. Pulling things together, still working on it. Right down here, if you watch at the bottom, in a moment, we're going to see it starting to generate slides, and there'll be a little bar moving across the screen. There it is right now. So now it's creating slides for me. And here we go. Lithium ion phosphate batteries on boats. Let's see what it came up with. Introduction to lithium ion, advantages, applications. What are lithium ion phosphate batteries? How do they compare to other technologies? Why are they used on boats? This is an interesting little, this reminds me of Johnny Five from that old movie. Benefits of lithium ion. So there's other ways for me to use AI in the environment. So like this image, if I didn't like this designer icon is AI powered. So this gives me other layouts for the same imagery, but maybe I don't like this imagery. So in Copilot, I can say, I'm going to delete this image. I'm going to delete this placeholder and say, add an image of an old person. Since this is longer lifespan, let's see if we can get an image of an old person on here. Oh, there we go. Fantastic. And so now if I go to designer, it will give me alternate layouts for that same imagery and for the content. So I can just keep clicking on see more design ideas until I find the layout that I particularly want. So it's very fast for me to create and edit a presentation. This is one of the things in Microsoft that I think is really, really powerful. Now, similarly, you can also ask Copilot to create presentations based on files. So you could give it and actually I did this, I think my wife is on this call right now. BJ's on the call right now. BJ's been job searching. And at one point she was asked to do a case study and they gave her, basically a text description of what the case study should be about. And I said, oh, let me do this with Copilot. And I pasted it in and it created a full presentation that she was then able to edit and add her own language, add her own tone to. And it was incredibly fast. She's messaging, such a time saver. Yeah, it was, it picked up a lot of cycles. We're not going to save that. All right, so let's look at a couple more and then I'm going to hand this off to Jay. So this one is a risky demo, but we're going to do it anyway. So let's go into Microsoft Teams and Copilot for Microsoft Teams. If you are a manager of employees, Copilot for Microsoft Teams should be your best friend. This is a thing I frequently do. So I'm going to paste this in. Using email files and chat, summarize what Matt Medeiros, my marketing director who's on the call, has been working on since Monday this week. As a manager, I have two choices. I can call Matt, interrupt his workflow, slow him down, maybe catch him off guard and, throw a wrench into his day. Maybe he's been having a rough day and his stomach's off anyway, and I'm just going to totally throw him for a loop. Or I can just ask Copilot to do this for me. So I'm going to go ahead and click go, and I am going to pull this off the screen for a half a second on the off chance that it responds with sensitive data. So we'll give it a moment. And what it's saying to me right now is I'm looking through Matt Medeiros' emails, chats, and documents for the last week. And let's say, perfect. Yeah, all right, this is awesome. All right, put it back on the screen. Nothing scary. So here's a summary of Matt's activity since Monday. On Monday morning, Matt was out of the office. All right. Yesterday afternoon, he worked on the marketing budget. We've been talking about that. Tuesday morning, he worked on our website tracker with Allison Brewer to update our digital presence on our website. Also on Tuesday morning, he was finalizing the Deadpool Preso document. So that's probably because we just had an event last week and we were sending out the slide deck to people. In terms of communication, I was tagged yesterday discussing the use of pallet wood for studio shelves. So this is a discussion that we had the other day, and I did very briefly see the message he sent me, but I never got a chance to read it. So it's great that it puts it here. But the thing I really want you to see is that it's talking about the marketing budget and expenses. There's the Excel spreadsheet. I can click on this. It brings me the reference documents. So Copilot will reference its responses to you with the source material. This is why the security matters so much. Jay Longley is going to talk about this, but let me tell you, in the old days of file servers, if you guys had, somebody dropped an HR file in a folder that was named webinars on your file server, there was a fair to middling chance nobody would ever find that. Right? Because there were literally millions of files on your file server, thousands, if not tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of folders. And so what would happen is nobody's going to the webinar folder looking for an HR document, so that's not going to happen. And when people do go to the webinar folder, they're looking for webinar related documents. And so unless the file was named everyone's salary and social security number .xls, probably nobody would notice the file. But Copilot knows every document in your environment. It knows the contents of every document in your environment. It is part of the semantic index. If you ask it a question and that document simply resides in a public location, Copilot will surface that information. That's why what Jay's going to talk about is so incredibly important. The labeling matters. All right. Let's see what else. Oh, yes. So we also have all the other apps that we would normally use every day. So here's an example of an Excel spreadsheet. Contains a bunch of demo data that I downloaded. So I'm going to go into Copilot and work with this. So I have a start date and I have an end date in this document. And I'm going to copy I pre-wrote all my prompts for you guys so you wouldn't have to watch me struggle to type with a cast on. So I'm going to ask Copilot to add a column that calculates the number of days between the start date and the end date. I really am interested in how long these projects are going to take. Now, I know how to write that formula in Excel pretty easy. Not everybody does. So one of the nice things about the product, so here it comes back and gives me the formula equals floor.math and end date start date, end date minus start date. So I like this. I'm going to say insert the column, and now it gives me the column with the calculations. Very simple. In Copilot, in any of the products, generally there's a list of things here already there for you to do. So if I said I want to analyze data, it says I can analyze data and show insights on charts and pivot tables, select a suggested prompt. All right, so let's see distribution of task name by project name. So we'll click on that one. And this is going to give us calculations and potentially even visualizations, graphs that can be added to the environment. And so if I go and look at sheet 2, I did that earlier, it gives me a graph, and this one, oh, task name by project name, that's the same column. If I look at this, I asked it to give me a graph of the days required by start date, and it gave me this. So analysis in Excel, very powerful tool. In Microsoft Word, very much like we were seeing a few minutes ago in oops, wrong screen. There we go. Just like in Edge, I can do a lot of the same things in Word that I can do in Edge. But one of the nice things about Word is that aside from being able to reference content that exists in my tenant, I can also create content that exists out on the web. I'm friendly with another IT company that's out there. So I'm just going to press Alt-I and ask it, hey, create an executive summary document comparing Envision to VC3. They're a Canadian company. I met the CEO out at a conference, really cool dude. We're fairly similar businesses. So if I say generate, it's going to go out on the web and gather the data, and it's going to read my website and it's going to read their website because I told it to use those as data sources, and it's going to start producing a services comparison in executive summary format. Interestingly, one of the things that we did with this functionality for our sales organization was when we're researching companies that we want to do business with, we've built a pre-made prompt for the sales team so that they can put in a company name and it'll go out and it'll research it'll research the board of directors. It'll give you the history of the company, when it was founded, where it's located, an overview of their services, recent news articles. So we use AI pretty heavily at Envision to dramatically shorten the amount of time it takes us to go from knowing nothing to knowing something about a prospect. And that's actually a task that used to belong to the marketing department that we were able to completely take out of their hands because of AI. So I think from here, I'm going to hand this off to Jay and say, take away on the security there, Mr. Jay.
All right, right on. I appreciate it. And I know we're in the essence of time, we'll keep it at high level. What we'll do is I'll show you a few things and we'll come back to this graph because I'm more of a visual person. So let's take a look at Microsoft Purview. Microsoft Purview itself, because everybody see my screen?
Yep.
All right. Microsoft Purview is the data security side for the organization, right? So there's a lot of different portals, we'll say, within here. You can handle, your audit. You can handle your communications compliance. You can handle all sorts of different compliances if you had a compliance within HIPAA or high-tech at 201 CMR 17. I want to pause on communication compliance also, and we'll come back to that in a second. Data catalog, this is all of the data within your system. It doesn't have to be all the data within Microsoft 365 because you can build connectors to your on-premise file systems. You can build connectors to those third-party sites like the Salesforce that you use. So your data catalog is all of your data assets and also the metadata around it. The metadata is what the graph itself, what the AI engine itself understands about you and understands about your data and maps that to all the different users and all that. So you want the assets and the metadata in a nice area you can reference. What we're going to focus on for a few minutes is data loss prevention and information protection. But before I do that, let's talk real quick about compliance and communication, at a very high level. Communication compliance, think of it this way. You have internal employees that largely communicate with teams and, through email and a variety of different mediums. In the past, you may have recorded meetings, but the communications themselves largely didn't have an engine behind it where you could identify things such as discrimination, such as threats, such as potentially sensitive types of information that you as an organization want to be alerted on and be understanding of that it's in there. So that way you can really identify it and stop certain things right before they escalate. So the communication compliance largely is an area that focuses in that area. Let's go back home for a second. Your compliance manager itself shows us areas where we can deal with data classification if you have a Microsoft 365 environment, right? Which most of us do. Within this area, within this portal, we get to identify very quickly US driver's license numbers. We get to understand social security numbers. You get to understand all sorts of PCI data. It's one of the areas when we do assessments, we'll jump in there very quickly and identify that any organization has sensitive information, and then do they have the proper ways to secure that information? Proper ways to secure that information, largely through this platform, is by putting a tag of data on every bit of information that traverses your system, your emails, your files, your communications, all of that. What that tag of data is largely sits in the information protection area. That tag will allow us to wrap compliance around your data. So using that compliance portal, we'll be able to do that. And I'm happy to take a deeper dive with anybody, one-on-one or in a group setting. But I know in the essence of time, I want to really just dive into information protection. So the information protection is where we put the tag of data on all of your communications. What these tags of data look for are sensitive info types, right? So if you have a full name, not necessarily full name alone may not be sensitive, but an ABA routing number is a sensitive bit of data. With an ABA routing number, you would want to identify it. That's in your system, email on somebody's OneDrive and part of your network on a third-party portal. You want to identify it. You want to secure it because you're required to, right? So you want to wrap encryption around it. You want to put that tag of data on there using this technology. What that tag of data does, using your sensitivity labels, is that tag of data, whenever you go to open up that file inspects the world around it, right? Jay Longley is trying to open up this email. Jay Longley is sitting at this computer in Rhode Island. Jay Longley is logged in user. It's at this IP address. All of these other metrics will be understood in a fraction of a second. It takes all that data, it sends it up to the Microsoft portal, right? It sends up to this portal. Does Jay Longley have access to open up this email? The answer is yes. Jay Longley can open up the email. The answer is no, because, well, it's not Jay Longley logged into this system. We found this file on the dark web. Somebody, that was an ex-worker, an ex-contractor took it home, and they shouldn't have access to this data anymore. When it inspects the world around it, it still sends that data up to 365. And if the answer is no, it's not allowed to have access to it. This portal right here is where you largely wrap your arms around it. The way we do it, we start with the sensitive info types, identifying the sensitive types of data that you want. We build trainable classifiers, right? Trainable classifiers themselves do quite a few things. They're built by Microsoft, but they're for you. It takes things like, if you're in healthcare, it takes a patient identifier, which could be 3 letters and 6 digits long. And patient identifiers can vary, right? So some organizations may have the first 2 letters of the state, and then the first letter of the person's first name, and then 6 digits, throughout. Or it could be the first couple of letters could differentiate. You understand what I'm getting at here. So it can differentiate between organization structure. The trainable classifiers themselves try to identify those sensitive types of data using an AI engine and say, look, we have identified these things that may be related to a budget or a business plan or a compliance policy or any of the things within this. And the AI engine will alert you on it. So that way you can action on it. You can say, yes, this should be encrypted. No, this should not. Yes, this is discrimination. No, this is not. Yes, this is related to insurance files. No, this is not. So you train the AI engine using these trainable classifiers, at a high level, so that way you can handle the data. Good, Todd.
So I'll add to that and say that the powerful thing about trainable classifiers is that if you were to click on the create trainable classifier for me real quick, Jay. When you create a trainable classifier, you see on the left-hand side there where it says select positive sample, select negative sample. You're actually training an AI model. You're showing it entire documents that fit. So if we had, for example, envision quotes, and we wanted to show it examples of envision quotes that we have in our system, those would contain a consistent quote number. They would have a similar header. They would have a similar body style to them, right? So the AI becomes capable of recognizing the document, even if one of the elements that would normally be looked at is obscured. So it's a very powerful way to see and gain control over your data. But it's worth pointing out, if you want to back out of that, Jay, and just go back to trainable. It's worth pointing out that when you are talking about identification of sensitive records, for example, a patient ID, right? Trainable classifiers are going to recognize, diagnosis forms and invoices and things like that. These might result in some false positives, but that's a better safe than sorry situation. What's worse than that is a false negative, not catching something that contains it. And that's where these EDM classifiers come into place. And that's our exact data match. This is where we're saying, hey, our patient ID looks like this. It's 10 characters, it's hexadecimal, it always starts with these three things. Very, very powerful stuff. And I saw a question that just popped in. Yes, exactly right. So Justin just responded. He said, so I don't have to explicitly label each file email with all these. I'm providing content to train it in what it is and isn't. That is correct. That's what you're doing with classifiers, trainable classifiers. You're giving it samples. Jay, is this an okay moment for me to swap back over?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I pulled up a document while Jay was talking. And you can actually see the document right here. This is a marketing document. It's some bios for some of our people that are publicly on our website, so not sensitive data. But you can see up here that the label that's currently assigned to this is Envision Internal. And we have several labels. And depending on the type of classifier that's detected, if a trainable classifier identified a social security number, this is going to get labeled as highly confidential HR, at which point only 3 people in the entire company are capable of opening it. And the document can only be opened from a company-owned device that's registered to our Intune. So no opening it on a home personal computer, even if you're in HR. As you move up the ladder all the way to senior C-suite, that's me and my COO. And we're the only 2 people in the world that can open that. So if this document contained this label and I accidentally save it out to a public location, it doesn't matter, because the users, when they go to try to access it, the security rests with the data, not with the location where it's stored. Okay, so BJ just asked a really question. So did you select the sensitivity on the file, or did it do that? The answer is both. The system detects the kind of data that's in it, who created it, where it was created, and applies the label that makes the most sense. I don't expect my users to remember to label every file they create. The system needs to do that automatically. But right now, this is Envision Internal. What if my marketing director was emailing this file to somebody outside the organization because these are the people speaking at an event? He has the ability to declassify the document and make it public, and it asks him why, because the previous label no longer applies. This is now a publicly facing document. It's been approved. And like all things that are role-based, we can go in and change who's allowed to declassify a document. And of course, if you're not a member of the label, you have no ability to declassify it. So only an HR person can declassify an HR document. Does that make sense? Go ahead, Jay.
I just want to point out that these sensitivity labels allow you to own your data no matter where your data sits. You put sensitive data on the dark web. Not that I'm daring you to do it, please don't, but it could be there. And this is how you protect the data at the data level itself, at the individual file level itself. And that's where the data should reside.
So getting back to our slide deck for a half a second here. The reason this matters is that oh yeah, and so Tyler asked the question, does it have an audit log? Absolutely. Everything that is done in here is tracked with Microsoft Purview, and you can go in and run audits on every time a label was applied, every time it was declassified, who did it, where it was done, when it was done. You can also create rule sets that prevent people, for example, from declassifying data if they're outside the domestic states, right? If you said, hey, I don't, if they're traveling in Asia, maybe my security is a little less because they're overseas. I don't want them to be able to declassify data when they're there because we know the security is a little bit less when they're traveling. There's lots of ways that you can handle this. But the reason this all matters goes back to this thing, right? In the absence of labeling, data labeling, the lowest level of security will be used to secure requests to Copilot. So in other words, going back to my example of Salesforce, if I'm an employee at Salesforce and I wrote, Mark Benioff had a meeting and I wasn't able to attend, summarize the meeting. If I wasn't a member of the meeting, I don't have permissions to the meeting. So the reality is that the lowest level of permissions there is probably going to prevent that. But if somebody during that meeting had created notes and created them outside of the meeting, that information will get surfaced. If there was an Excel spreadsheet that contained information about people who might be on the list of folks that would be downsized, and there were notes related to it, that might get surfaced, right? On the other hand, if at the time that document was created, it automatically had an HR label or a C-suite label applied to it because of the sensitivity of the information. If that had happened automatically, that label excludes the user from being able to include that information in the graph in the response. So the only real way to protect information in AI, and frankly in the world at large, is to label documents. Think about it this way. All the times, everyone on this call has had their information exposed in a data breach. I don't think there's anyone on this call that hasn't, right? And it happens because companies, they get crypto locked and the hacker exfiltrated 20 terabytes of data and your information was in that 20 terabytes. If the security of the data rested inside the files, every one of those files that had been exfiltrated would have been encrypted. And there would have been no risk of actual exposure of the content in the wild. So it's it's a very powerful solution for securing your data. Justin just asked a question. If I'm not explicitly enabled Copilot in my O365 environment, do I need to be concerned? It isn't injected into my environment by Microsoft by default, correct? Yes and no.
Yeah, if you own a license, it enables Copilot.
Yeah, if you have even one license of Copilot for testing purposes, it's building a semantic index in your environment. If your users have Windows 11 that includes Copilot, they have the ability to take company documents and ask questions via Copilot with it. They will not just turn on Copilot in Word for you. You do need to pay for that license, so you don't have to worry about that. But this conversation of data security, our argument at Envision is AI or no AI. This is the right problem to be solving right now at a global scale. We need to be applying data sensitivity to all of our documents. So I will hang and answer a couple more questions if people have them. But just a couple of quick ways that we can help you guys. Number one, if you're interested in Copilot, we can do an evaluation of your tenant, take a look at how your security settings are configured, and tell you what your readiness is like for Copilot. And that doesn't cost you a thing. We can do engagements for you to configure all these labeling tools for Purview. We can train your staff, your technical talent, on how to manage labeling and how to do things like Tyler asked. How do I see who declassified a document? We can teach you how to do that. We can help you set up the semantic index for AI so that your Copilot is answering questions with the right information that's relevant to your user population. And of course, we can help you prepare your pilot group to do testing internally once those things are in place, so that you can see both the benefits and the risks associated with AI. I think AI is easily one of the most transformative tools that we've been handed in a very long time. The last time I felt like this about a technology was when we were first thinking about x86 virtualization, and every data center had 100,000 servers in them, and there was iron everywhere. And this was a way for us to be more energy efficient and to have a smaller footprint of data center. That was very transformative. AI has this same ability, but this is a privilege, and like all privileges, it comes with some responsibility. And it's on us as an industry to make sure that we teach our users how to use this responsibly. We show them how to derive value from it. We set it up really well up front with security. That we build this for success and not set people up for failure. Because otherwise, we're going to have a great technology that gets a really bad rap because we didn't do those things. So if you're interested in learning more about it, next week we're going to dive into how to tailor and tune Copilot, how to connect external data sources, how to teach it industry, company acronyms, and how to tune the responses in the semantic index so that specific keywords are weighted more heavily than others. Basically, how to make it more valuable. So you're welcome to scan the icon here if you want to register, or just go to our website, and we'll see you next week on Thursday, August 8th. Thank you guys for your time today. I hope you had a good time.
Thank you.
We'll see you.
Thank you. Take care.
Hey, Justin, you want to unmute?